Perfect. Take a seat if you like. Cool. All right, nice. So thank you all for coming. Really do appreciate it. And also to D1 as well for giving me this opportunity. At the end, there's an opportunity if you've got any questions about anything. We can have like a bit of a Q&A if you want to know anything about drones or my YouTube journey or anything like that. I've decided to kind of split it up a little bit. So like half of the presentation will kind of be about how I've built my drone audience and how I've kind of got into drones more. And I guess the intention of that is just to kind of show you how things can start with such a completely different intention, right? Like I'll show you my first video that I uploaded. It was filmed on a webcam. Just very cringy stuff, very weird to show you all, but it's just amazing to see how far things can go. You just don't know what's possible if you don't put yourself out there. So yeah, I'll start off with a little bit about my YouTube journey, how I have got to where I am today, and then I'm going to break it down into more of the drone focus side of things around, making money with drones, and also like building drone brands, which has kind of been a bit of my journey recently. But I do run DansTube.TV and the Fearless Drone Academy. They're the two kind of brands that I've been focusing on recently for drone content specifically. And I started back in 2009. So it's been a very, very long journey. And I started like right at the end of high school. So basically like I was filming with literally a web camera that was on my desk, and I would just review apps on my phone. Like I just hold the phone there, and that was all I did. And the whole intention was to try to, I guess, connect with more people. Like I didn't really fit in school. I moved here from England and was struggling to kind of make some friends. So I thought, why not put yourself on the internet, Why not? Let's see what happens. So that's kind of how it all started. And now it's built to the point that I've uploaded over 2,000 videos, which is wild to me that it's that many videos. Reached 50 million total views and then amassed 100,000 followers on all platforms. But again, started with none of these intentions at all. Like when I started, I was actually, it was just something I was doing for fun, just to create the content and to connect. And my goal was actually like, I'm now a therapist or a counselor. So that was kind of the focus of my career, my journey. And YouTube was just something I was doing in the background. Could have never imagined that I would be talking here or connecting with big brands or anything like that. So yeah, I guess that's hopefully something you'll gain from the first portion, is just to see the steps that it can take and where things can lead if you put yourself out there. So I'll just quickly show you my first video. You might not be able to hear it. It's very cringy. So this is how I started, on a webcam, terrible quality. That was it. That was my first ever video on YouTube, 2009.
And how many views did that get?
Let's have a look. I think it's at 409 views. Wow. There you go.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
There you go. That was 2009, July 2009. So yeah, that's where I started. It's just shows you, right? It's like you can really start with no intention at all, right? Just to get into the space to create YouTube content. So let's just go to the next one. So this is kind of like what I was going to talk through for the first portion of like how YouTube started for me. It looks like there's a big gap here, but there are a few little things that I'll talk through in here. But these are kind of some of the milestones, I guess, or the things that I identified as like when things started changing for me, when I started getting attention from companies, when the views started coming in a bit more. And I guess when it actually hit me that I'm like, I could actually make a career out of this. Because YouTube is like a very challenging area to tap into. Like there's a lot of competition, as I'm sure you'd know. And even in the drone space, like anything that you can think of that's a niche, there's already many other people doing that thing. So it can be a bit disheartening, but yeah, I guess there's so much potential still. There's so many eyes out there that are looking for something different. So this is kind of like the early path, I guess. So my channel, it's now referred to as DansTube.TV. It started as the iPod Touch world. So I was doing those iPod Touch reviews with the apps, basically app reviews. And yeah, again, the iPod Touch world, like bit of a weird name, just kind of jumped into it. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll do app reviews. I'll just call it the iPod Touch world. And then kind of transitioned into doing product reviews a little later on. But like I was saying, like early on when I moved here, I was struggling to fit in, didn't really have any sort of friendships or connections moving from England. So I did have one friend that was actually helping me do some videos early on, and that was the Enthusiastic Gamers XP. Very ironic because we weren't overly enthusiastic. Very monotone, very neutral the whole time. And XP, if you know Windows XP, that's the operating system we were using. So it just shows you, like, you can come up with the weirdest names. It doesn't mean anything about your brand, right? Like a lot of the time I find people always ask me, like, how do I start? How do I make YouTube content? or how do I start a brand? And a lot of the time people get caught up in the name, they get caught up in the logo and what it looks like. But that just shows you, it's like, that doesn't even mean anything, right? Like the iPod Touch world was nothing, but yeah, it just shows you that there's potential outside of the brand or the name. And then I created something called Worldwide Tech Reviews, which was something I did with a group of people. I kind of thought, there's other people that do it now, like IGN, if you've heard of the game company IGN, or GameSpot. They have a lot of different experts in different areas that kind of review different content. They do apps and video games and products. So I guess early on I was thinking like that could be something that I could tap into myself. So this is kind of where I started noticing that there was potential for me to like go anywhere. Because like, I guess like the whole idea of this is to create a YouTube channel and to have a brand. It takes years, right? 2009 is when I started. It's only now started to pick up, now that I've got an editor, now that I've got some brand alignments. But it just kind of shows you that it takes a lot of time to get there. So in 2012 is actually when I reached 1 million views and when I started getting paid for content. And I remember like looking at that going like, this is crazy that like imagine 1 million people in a room. You can't even comprehend that amount of people in a room. And to have that many people like watching the content was, again, mind blowing. It still is to this day. So yeah, I started doing like a lot of giveaways. And some of the people there were these little rechargeable cases that I gave away to some people. Those people are still like people that I'll talk to, like regularly on Messenger. They'll hit me up on Instagram. And those people are like true fans, you know, like they might not watch drone content nowadays, but they were there from the beginning. And just the fact that I could make those connections when I was struggling to fit in, like for me, yeah, I owe so much to that. Like building my confidence, talking to a camera is one thing, but making connections was like such an awesome experience throughout the YouTube journey. But I guess, yeah, if anyone is, or anyone you know is considering doing the YouTube side of things, like it is a very challenging space to tap into for sure. So just kind of keep that in mind. But giveaways are a great way to get like initial exposure. But one thing that's a little bit weird is I still to this day, because I have given away products for many years now, people will hit me up on Instagram quite regularly and go, hey, can you send me a drone? That's how the message starts. Hey, can I have a drone? Like, hey, I'm Dan, nice to meet you. Like they don't introduce themselves, it's just, hey, can I have a drone? I still get it. Like I had one earlier today and they just message regularly because I do giveaway. So it can really attract quite desperate people. So there's a lot of potential in doing a giveaway and you can reach a lot of people, but I don't know, it's a weird one. I've even had people like threaten themselves, like their own safety. If I don't win, I'm going to hurt myself. And I'm like, you can't put that on me. Come on, I'm giving away a product here. What are you talking about? So yeah, those things, you just can't predict any of that stuff when you start a journey like this. And then yeah, one of the big moments for me, like with the giveaway side of things, noticing the potential was there was someone who won an iPod Shuffle. You remember the little iPod Shuffles? I don't think are around anymore. This person, yeah, they were like cleaning a restaurant regularly. And basically their manager would turn off the music and they wouldn't have any music in the restaurant. They were just cleaning in pitch black, basically, like silence, all the lights would get turned off. And they won the iPod Shuffle and they basically sent me a message and told me how much of an impact that it had on their lives. It's such a positive impact for them to actually be able to listen to their music while they were still cleaning the restaurant. And again, it's like an iPod Shuffle wasn't worth much. I just did it as something to give back to people. But to get that immediate response and to know that I've impacted someone in such a positive way was such a beautiful thing. So that's why I still regularly do giveaways, even though there's a lot of people who are still constantly requesting that I give things to them. Yeah, I wish I had a photo. This was a weird period in the journey. I had like a wall of products. So when I started getting noticed for the product reviews, companies would reach out. Hey, can you review this for us? Hey, can you review whatever? And like I would review like a phone alcohol breathalyzer, like a thing you'd plug into your phone to test if you'd been drinking. Sounds so weird, right? But I'd say yes to everything because I guess I noticed the momentum and people were starting to reach out. And there's so much power in saying no. You know, there's so much power in actually knowing your value and saying, I can't do that, you know, or I'm not interested in the product. But early on, I would review everything. And it was genuinely overwhelming. I had like a wall of products. Yeah, and it's something, I guess, like a life lesson outside of YouTube, like just the power of saying no and the power of like knowing your value. There's a lot in that for sure. Because I think, yeah, early on you're getting that attention and you're kind of going, okay, but I think I have to say yes, right? Like I can't say no to these people. They want me to work with them. Yeah, that was like a good life lesson for me, learning that as I was studying, which, I've been studying psychology and counseling. So that helped me get a sense of like boundaries, values, and just saying no as well. There's a lot of power in that for sure. So this was kind of where I noticed that there was potential for me to actually make some form of money on YouTube, because again, it takes a long time to kind of get there. But this was something that I went back to my roots of doing the app reviews. And this one, I beat IGN and GameSpot to the punch. They were always releasing content, always ahead of me on everything. And for whatever reason, I somehow beat them 24 hours to release this. And I just noticed like the influx of subscribers and engagement and whatnot. And again, it just reiterated the fact that it's like there is potential in this, even though I'm just doing it for fun, not really thinking too much about it. Yeah, that kind of, again, was another little indicator in 2013. So then I kind of went through a journey of trying a few different things. This was probably a big moment for me. So kind of like, you couldn't really hear my voice, but when I started my videos, I was just like monotone. I was like, hey guys, welcome to the iPod Touch world. I didn't really have any personality. And then I kind of went the opposite direction and I was like, well, these YouTubers, they're really loud and, hey, what's up everyone, it's me. So I didn't really know what to do. So I was trying to figure out my voice around that time. So this is actually where I started experimenting with like trying different approaches, you know, seeing how I presented on camera, practice different approaches. And this was a really big moment for me to kind of, I guess, develop my voice online. Yeah, so that was probably one of the standout moments of when I started identifying what it's like to be myself on the internet. Because it is a weird thought. If anyone's put themselves out on the internet in any capacity, it's like you're putting yourself out there to be judged, right? Completely. And I still get comments to this day where people like criticize me for things. That just comes with the territory of putting yourself out online. But I guess that's just the way it is, right? And then the final thing was just like the little series I created to really cement the fact that I was trying to build something genuine here was I did a series called Dan and the Fans, which is where I connected with my viewers and we just kind of had little impromptu chats. Like we'd jump on Skype, talk, and that would be posted online. So yeah, I guess you can kind of see that it's kind of gone through different stages. This is where I got into the product review space a little bit more. So it transitioned from the apps into the products. And this is where I was saying no to a lot more. This is where like I'm just like, I can't do that. I physically don't have the time to do that. I'm not going to do that. And there was a moment actually for me, like the second point there, I did have a few companies like threaten legal action on me because I basically was honest in my review. I'm like, don't think this product's great. I think there are better options out there. And I had companies say that they were going to take me to court over that because they're like, you're defaming the whole brand. That's what a review is. You're being honest about a product. And yeah, that's the thing that like really highlighted to me. It's like all I have at this point is my integrity. Because if I'm to say that something's great, someone goes and buys that thing, they're not going to go to the company and complain. They're going to come to me and go, why did you say it was good when it's terrible? So then that would all completely fall back on me. So that really highlighted to me. It's like, you know, you have to be honest. You have to be authentic online. You can't sell out in any way because people will see through that 100%. So there are a few other little kind of moments here. The 2016 was a crazy one to me. I remember, does anyone know Western Digital, the hard drive company? Yeah, so they reached out to me randomly. I wasn't even doing any reviews on their stuff, but they flew me to Sydney to test one of their products. And like they sent me through like a film set and they're like, here's our product, here's a camera, test it out and see how it goes. And I remember like sitting there going like, I was a kid in my mum's house filming with a webcam. How am I getting flown out to do this now? Crazy to me. Even like thinking back at it now, it's like some of the opportunities that can come up are amazing, but you wouldn't know any of this if you didn't try, right? You'd have no idea if you didn't put yourself out there. So that was kind of where I was doing a few product reviews around the GoPro side of things. And I didn't even discover drones at this point. This was probably the biggest step recently. So the channel had got to a point where I was able to hire myself an editor. So prior to this, those thousands of videos I'd uploaded, I was studying a master's degree, still trying to film videos, still trying to somehow edit everything. And I remember I was just like exhausted. There was no way that I could physically keep up with it. So getting myself an editor recently was probably the biggest moment of noticing that this is going somewhere, noticing that there's kind of potential. And I would suggest that for anyone. Outsourcing is a big thing if you've got the capacity to do it. Outsourcing is, you know, not just in film, but anything. If you're not good at something, there is someone out there who will definitely be good at it. All right, so just briefly before we go into the drone stuff, these are kind of some of the things outside of the YouTube side of things. And I guess I wanted to highlight that even though I'm in a privileged position to get the opportunity to review the DJI products and to come into a store like this, my whole goal the whole time was to actually get into counseling and to become a therapist. And I think that me filming on camera, me putting myself in a position of vulnerability and to to challenge myself and to reflect on myself has probably taken me in that direction anyway. You know, wanting to better myself and going through struggles early on in high school. Like, yeah, it was definitely a big thing for me to go down that path and have that as my main focus. And drones just happen to be something that I do now as like a part-time job. All right, and just some quick suggestions. So I don't really know like if anyone is in the YouTube space, in the creative space, but just a few points here. Like this one here is probably the biggest one. I have friends ask me all the time, like, hey, I've got this idea for something. Should I post a video on it? Do you think that that's a good idea? And recently one of my friends was telling me that, you know how you can get like charcoal toothpaste? He was going, oh man, there's a big industry for charcoal toothpaste. Like, I think I'm going to start creating some content on it. And I'm like, dude, is that something you care about? Or are you just thinking about the money? Because that will not sustain at all. If you're just doing it for a paycheck, it won't sustain. That thing will die off, that niche will be gone. It has to be something you're always thinking about. Regardless, if it's outside of YouTube, I think this is a philosophy for life. Like, pursue things that actually fill you up in any capacity. Because, right, you've only got one opportunity to live, right? And that's, to me, doing the counseling and the YouTube, such a beautiful opportunity to get into those two. But it's taken a lot of like trial and error, right? And that's the same with anything, like trying to find a career that's fulfilling for you, trying to put yourself out on the internet in some way. You have to experiment. You don't know what's going to land until it lands. And you look at my first video, I'm filming with a webcam. I had no idea that I would be here today. Could not have predicted that in any way. So I think that's a big lesson for life. Just anything that you can't stop thinking about, that sits with you constantly, that you're excited about, pursue that in any way. And then a lot of people ask me, like, how do I talk on camera? Because that's something I've done for thousands of videos now. And it takes a lot of time to get used to your voice. So many people hate the sounds of their own voice, right? I'm sure most of us here are like that. And that uncomfortable feeling of going, I'm putting this out for people to judge me, that can be quite uncomfortable. So the advice I always give to people is film 10 videos of you talking to the camera with the intention of deleting them immediately. So film it just with the intention of talking, just practice. And then the 11th video is the one that you actually release for your initial stage, because it's an uncomfortable thing to talk on camera. There's no denying. No one's naturally going to jump in and feel comfortable with that. So that's probably the big thing. And then there's a few other points around collaboration and finding communities. Okay, so this is kind of, I guess, my initial journey. So just quickly, like what drone does everyone have? What was your first drone? Was that your first drone? First drone Mini 3 Pro. What was yours? Don't have a drone? No?
I had a Zero 6 years ago.
Zero? Is that a brand? Okay. Never heard of that
I
one.
wanted DJI because it seemed like clear, like had to have all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it first got into the market, and I got the Zero, and the first flight was maybe 90 meters high and a battery.
No way. Terrifying. Okay.
Not gonna be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you two?
The Mini.
The Mini? Mini. Mavic Mini. Nice. Yep. Cool.
Me too, and I drowned it within 6 days.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So,
Yeah. Nah. Have you got a drone now?
no, it's out.
Yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. What about you?
Phantom 2.
Phantom 2. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Phantom. Don't know where that range has gone. It's obviously been discontinued or something, but I love it. Is? They're still selling them? Okay. Weird. You just never see them in any stores. Anyway, it's a good concept. I don't know why they cut it a bit, but anyway. All right. So for me, like the first drone I tested was a weird one. It was a Call of Duty drone. So if you've ever heard of Call of Duty, the game, they had a drone which was called the MQ-27. It was actually in the video game. And Call of Duty always had these grand offerings where they're like, you buy our game, if you buy the extra one, you'll also get like a drone or remote control thing. So that was like the first time I ever saw a drone in action or even had to fly the thing. And it was terrible. Like it would not handle it went in someone's yard. We lost it in someone's yard after testing it for about 10 minutes. But that was the first time I saw it and I was like, there's potential here. But around that time, hadn't really tested anything else. So after I did that initial video online, again, because of the fact that you're putting yourself out there, companies want to reach out and go, well, he's got a few eyes on him. How can we use him to get some views, right? So a lot of companies reached out, but I was, again, very selective, only reviewed the ones that were really standing out to me. And then the first drone I ever purchased, which was a DJI drone, was the Mavic Pro. So prior to that, like the Phantom, I loved the concept of it, but I don't know, maybe it was too expensive at the time or something. I just couldn't get my head around getting it. But don't know if anyone remembers the GoPro Karma at all. Can you remember that thing? That thing was, I nearly purchased that thing. That was just falling out of the sky. That whole, like GoPro's whole drone department got shut down after the release of that drone because it would just fail. Like the battery would fail, it would fall out the sky, it wouldn't hover. Terrible release. So very happy that I didn't go down that path because a lot of people lost their drones around that time. And then I kind of went into a bit of this again, another opportunity that you couldn't predict or expect. A company saw a few of my videos and said, hey, would you like to do a certificate 3 in aviation, do the REPL? That was Ace Aviation. They're like a Mount Gravatt-based drone school. Again, didn't expect that, didn't reach out to them. They just said, hey, would you be interested in doing something like this? And that was basically how I became a qualified drone pilot and then went down the path of focusing more heavily on drones. So prior to that, it was all the app reviews, all the product reviews. And, I listened to a lot of like business books and a lot of people are like, you have to niche your content, you have to niche it, you have to be focused. But for whatever reason, it just didn't sit right with me. I tried so many different things. But straight when I niched to the drone stuff, that's when things actually started picking up. That's when I got the attention. That's where I started becoming a reputable person in that drone space. Okay, and this is just some kind of insights into maybe some of the opportunities that could be available out there. So I'll go into like the different ways to make money with drones, but I guess like I've identified a few different gaps in the market. So for people out there who are interested in drones, like definitely keep your ear to the ground because there's so many different opportunities that are underground that you don't notice. The first one was like drone apparel, so like clothing, something that at the time when I released it, I didn't realize, but the whole FPV space, have you seen the racing drones, the FPV drones? There is a whole market, like a whole industry of people who are obsessed with FPV drones. They race competitively, they do their fun freestyle side of things. And when I started this, I didn't even know how big of an industry that was. But from me starting a clothing brand just to go, I want to offer cool stuff to people, didn't think it would be anything big. I was just like, this could be a fun, exciting thing to do. I connected with some of the like FPV champions throughout the world. Like I just reached out to them, told them what I'm doing, and I made some amazing connections through that. And I think there's still definitely a market there. I've like since shut down my In the Sky clothing, but I think the clothing side of things is like an untapped market in the drone space. I think there's a lot of cool things that could be done for sure. And then actually this was when I kind of connected with the D1 store, the DJI Australia initially. So weirdly enough, someone reached out to me on Facebook and said, I've got this Mavic Mini Australia Facebook page or group at the time. Do you want to have it? And it had like under 100 members. I'm like, I guess, yeah, sure. I'll use it, whatever. And that page is built to over 4,400 members now. That was something that there was a lot of momentum because the Mavic Mini is such a popular drone, and then the Mavic 2, and then we've obviously had the SE and all the others. But that for me, that was actually where I was able to create a brand in the drone space, like a real brand. I started reaching out to different companies and doing a bunch of giveaways on the page. And again, like just the idea of building community is what it's all about with anything you do online. And that's where I started doing a lot of giveaways and events and whatnot, and really awesome opportunity to try to connect with some more people. And that's where I had the D1 store on in 2020. I had Daniel, the operations manager, on the podcast to talk about the D1 store and the repairs and whatever else they do. So that was like my initial connection with the D1 store in the drone space. And I guess that's where I started highlighting like there's definitely potential. Like this industry is growing. There's a lot of people that want to get into the drone space. And then from there, like with the whole Eye in the Sky clothing side of things, I wasn't passionate about it again. I'd lost the passion. So again, like I was saying in the previous slide, you have to care about it, right? If you fall out of love with something, it's going to show. And that was something that was very clear with me, like that drone apparel side of things. It was fun and it had like a moment, like a season in my life, but I fell out of love. I was over it. It was too much. So like I rebranded that whole thing into the Fearless Drone Academy. If you've seen my drone course that I've released, and that was something that I'm still trying to put a lot of energy into, because doing the qualification to become a drone pilot and then, learning about a lot of the things that people do, like a lot of the mistakes that people do when they crash or when they have issues, I thought that I had something unique to offer there. So that's kind of why I decided to do the Fearless Drone Academy. So at this point here, I'd love if anyone's got any other thoughts as well. I'm keen to hear what you've got here. The first thing though, like in terms of making money with drones, there's a lot of different ways that you can make money. I'm going down the path of the online brand and the YouTube side of things. Wouldn't suggest that to most people because it's a slog. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, very fulfilling, but it can take a long time to build any sort of presence online. I'd say the first thing would be, getting yourself a remote pilot license. That for me was something that got me into that space, talking to people who were already making money. So the connections you can make from doing a course anyway, that helped me a lot because I got into a position where I was able to do some paid drone work. Wouldn't have been possible if I didn't do the drone course. So I think if you are interested in drones and you want to take it seriously, that's the obvious starting point. But there's definitely a lot of gray area. I have a lot of people I know who don't have a license but are getting paid to do drone content. So it's a little bit unregulated in that sense, but getting yourself something like that does put you in the position to connect with the people who will actually give you opportunities. The second one is an interesting one. I find a lot of people I've connected with do get opportunities through Google Maps. So there's a lot of this organic reach. On Google Maps, you post a photo of a hotel, obviously follow rules and regulations, but if you post a photo of a hotel or a business and post that online, it's immediately got organic reach. You don't have to promote that at all. If anyone's looking up that business, they're going to see your photo. And I've got a photo of there's a plant store in West End. It's a photo of the front of the store. It's got 2 million views. It's just wild, just so weird. But you can literally leverage that in a way to start to make money through your content, because it's all about the eyes that you have on you, and it's all about what you're putting out into the world. So if you start reaching out to people, I've had people who have reached out to hotels and gone, hey, I've taken a few photos of your hotel. I'd love to come down and stay again. Is it possible, can you give me a night? Can I stay for a night and I'll take a few more photos for you? It's pretty easy to actually transition into that if you've already got the credibility from posting online. And that can go into more. I've had people who have started getting paid work from brands because they're getting that attention on their Google Maps. Sounds like such a weird thing, but it is something you can do, and you can leverage the eyes that are already on Google Maps. And that already builds yourself as a name, right? Because if you're posting as yourself, if I'm posting as Dan Davis, people see that. That's visible. People can see the views I'm getting. They can see the engagement. And that can sell your brand and yourself a little bit further to get into more of a paid capacity, if that's something that you care about. So that's definitely an option. I think that's something that's overlooked by a lot of people, but there's definitely a lot of potential in there. Real estate is an interesting one because I've had a few people who have reached out to me. One of my friends as well, he works as a real estate videographer and he doesn't have any form of drone degree or film degree or anything like that. But he got that because he built a portfolio. He actually reached out to me and asked, hey, at the time, I wasn't living with my mum, but she was pretty close to me, and he's like, do you think I could film your mum's property at all? Just to build a portfolio? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man, that's fine. I'll talk to her. She said yes. That video he got of my mum's property was the reason that he got a job as a videographer. It's these things you just can't predict, right? But if you put yourself out in that way, the drone space I find is a little bit untapped in that way. Other industries you might have to have a qualification, for me as a counselor, it's I can't work as a counselor if I don't have a degree as a counselor. But there's no reason why you can't get into the creative sides of videography and photography by just building your portfolio. I'm sure that we know people that you'd be able to actually film something, their property or their rental, as long as you've got permission. No reason why you can't build that portfolio and pitch that to people when you are going to different jobs. The other one which people always forget about is there's stock image sites all over the internet, but Getty and Shutterstock, you can post your photos and then actually make commission if people start using your photos. Really easy to do. You're not going to be making bank off it. You're not going to be making too much money, but it's getting your foot in the door. And if, again, drones are something you care about and you want to pursue this further, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing that. If you're already capturing beautiful sceneries and landscapes, you just don't know. People might want to use that. I've had people download some of my Shutterstock photos. You make a little bit of money off it. It's not about the money. It's about seeing what's possible, right? And putting yourself in those positions. I've got I mentioned the online brand side of things. I think if that's something you want to pursue, building a brand in general is powerful. Just outside of drones, if we talk about it, for me, knowing the psychology of people and, doing the cold counseling side of things, I have got opportunities in my counseling work because I have a brand online. Because I'm someone that actually has a brand and talks to people and has an image, people will want to work with me because of that. And this is a completely separate industry, right? Like they're not connected in any way, drones and counseling. But because I've put myself out there and I've proven that that's something, that's actually led to something. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that say that we should all have a brand for something we do. I mean, that's a whole nother commitment for a lot of us. But I mean, why not, right? If something is passionate to you and you care about it, it could lead to many things, as I've shown you. That's the whole reason that first half slides. You just have no idea what's possible if you don't do it. So I do, with the Fearless Drone Academy, I do have like an ambassador program. So if anyone is in that space, wants to make some money, I do offer the ambassador program to people where you can make some commission off drone sales. Weddings, I would say, is a big one. I've known a few people who have got friends, family, who have a wedding and go, hey, I know you've got a drone. Do you think you could take some videos or photos for me? And especially with the newer drones, like you look at the Air 3 or the Mavic 3 Pro, like they've got zoom lenses on them, right? They've got like the telephoto systems. There's no reason why you can't be a distance back, not disrupting the wedding. No one can even hear the drone. And you can get some pretty amazing photos and videos. And again, it's all about the portfolio. If you film a few weddings, it doesn't matter if you don't have a film degree or if you're not, if you don't have all these qualifications. I've known a few people to get into events videography because of the fact that they've built a portfolio from the content they're creating online. So that's always a possibility as well. I think a lot of people don't dive into it because they think, I have to have this qualification or there's too much competition out there. But I kind of think it's a little bit of the opposite. I don't think there's enough people utilizing their drones to make money in these capacities. There's definitely a lot of options out there. The bottom ones are like the main ones that are getting a lot of funding behind them. So agriculture, mining, the construction, all of those actually get a bulk of funding from government and different companies. But I would say I highlighted inspections because, again, I think that's another thing. If you've got a drone and every property, if it's like a high rise or if it's something that they don't have the access to be able to see their gutters or to see the damage on their property, you can pitch them on the idea of, hey, I have a drone. Would you be interested in me getting some photos, some high quality photos and videos? And I can give that to you for an inspection. Again, pretty easy to do. I've done it myself. You just pitch companies on it. And again, you've got the drone. They probably don't have a drone. They probably don't have a media team that's dedicated on inspection. And that's honestly another pretty easy way to kind of get your foot in the door to make some money from drones as well. All right, so these are just so like I said, I've done a lot of the education side of things around doing the drone course. And then when I built my own drone course, I was really diving into some of the most obvious things that people screw up. And there's a few here that I see way too much. People post it on YouTube all the time. It's kind of crazy to me. But the first two, so Open Sky and OK to Fly, really good apps to get if you don't have them already. They will help you actually see the no-fly zones. So they'll let you know if there's a military base in the area, or let you know if there's any flight paths that you need to be aware of. And it's good to know, right? Because especially if you plan to go somewhere, you might not know what's in that area. If it's a new location you're flying, it's just handy to jump on those apps, type in, let's say, North Stradbroke Island or something like that, and it will let you know what the flight paths look like. So that's always really handy for safety. And if anyone's been in a situation where they've flown into a no-fly zone, it's a little bit of a weird experience because it kind of flashes and it forces you to come back. It will go, hey, return to home now in a no-fly zone. And if you're not prepared for that, that can be a pretty overwhelming experience when you're flying a drone. So just being mindful of that is a great starting point for sure. The thing I find way too many people do though, so Drone Buddy is a great one. Wind Compass is probably the one I use the most, but actually identifying the wind speed and gust speed. That to me blows my mind that people don't think about these things because wind direction is such a big thing. There's a lot of people who post content online. I don't know if you've seen any of them. They fly their drones out and they use the momentum of the wind to get to a location. And then they try to fly back, but they're flying against the wind now. So there's more resistance, the drone's flying slower, and they don't make it back in time. And if you look online, there are a lot of different range tests where the drone will just crash into the sea or it will land in a forest. And it's funny because a lot of the time they complain and they whinge, oh, it's DJI's fault. No, it's clearly user error. But again, these things aren't taught to people. You just buy a drone, you don't think anything about it. But I would say wind direction is a big one, being hyper aware that at some point the wind could change as well. You just don't know. And my rule of thumb all the time is make sure that you're relatively close to yourself when you're at about 30% battery. Because a lot of the time you'll be out in the ocean, if you fly over the ocean, you try to fly back at 30% and there's a bunch of wind pushing against you. That is not a fun experience when you're trying to get back before the drone crashes. That's not a good position to be in at all. So I think that's a big thing a lot of people miss, like actually being aware of wind direction, and also battery percentage. Like it tells you in the top right what the battery percentage is. If you tap on that indicator, it will actually pop up and tell you how long until it forces the landing, how long until it returns to home, and how long until the battery is completely depleted. So they're all really good indicators. It will basically let you know, hey, you need to get back. Within the next minute, get back. So that's something a lot of people don't do. Another thing is battery. Like batteries can swell and bloat pretty easily. And if you've ever seen a battery swell, they typically won't fit in your drone. So once the battery swells to a certain point, there'll be so much resistance trying to get it in the actual compartment that it just won't work. But some people force it in. And if a battery is getting to the point that the cells are damaged or that it is swelling or bloating, at any point that could fail on you mid-flight. So that's something that you've got to be aware of. Like you can literally inspect the battery. And even what I did when I first started buying drones was I would take a photo of the battery just to see the shape of it, just to see how it actually looks when you buy it brand new. So then as you start inspecting it as time goes on, you can see if there's any changes. Because at any point you might knock your battery and that little knock could rupture it and slowly start to swell the battery. But you wouldn't notice that if you weren't being hyper aware that this thing can happen. So I think that's a big one. And this one here actually saved me recently. I probably would have lost my Mini 3 Pro. Basically, all of these motors are brushless motors, so they should spin freely without any resistance. So what I was taught through Ace Aviation was that when your drone's on the ground, physically spin the motors. Just sit there and spin each individual motor. And if there's no resistance, that's how it should be, because they're brushless motors. There shouldn't be any contact points. But if you're feeling a little bit of a tug or a pull, that could indicate there's a lot of debris in the motors, sand or dirt or whatever it may be. And that recently happened with my Mini 3 Pro. I found that it wasn't spinning. There was 2 motors, they just weren't spinning. And I was going to launch it, and I'm like, no, I don't think you should. I think you should be mindful here that it could damage it at any point. And I'm very glad I didn't, because I sent it to the D1 repairs, and 2 of those motors were about to crap out on me. And they actually seized up completely. So one of the motors wouldn't spin at all. And I don't fly near sand. Typically, I'm hand launching it or away, I have a little pad that I land. So, for me, I didn't think that I'd have any debris. And I think it's a good indicator for a lot of us just to do. It's such a simple test. Just spin the motor. There should be no resistance at all. Another thing here, it's the big one that a lot of people don't do as well. Launch their drone and they just send it. It takes it off and then you just send the thing. What's really helpful to do is to actually watch the behavior of your drone. So have it sitting there for a minute, 2 minutes, and just watch it. See how much it's moving with the wind, see if it's making any weird sounds, and just see the behavior of the drone. Because again, if you're not aware of how a drone should fly or how a drone should sound, you're not going to pick up on those subtle nuances. I had a really weird sound that was happening in one of my older drones, and I found out that it was one of the motors, again, that was crapping itself on me. I wouldn't have picked up on that if I didn't hear that sound. If I just launched the drone, I wouldn't have known any different. But because I picked up on that sound, I was able to reach out and get the drone repaired for me. So I think that's a really good rule of thumb, especially when you buy a brand new drone, just see how it behaves, because it should be hovering. It shouldn't be moving too much. And if it is moving a lot, if it's making a really weird high-pitched sound, anything like that seems a little off, it could be an indicator to send it in for repair. And the whole thing is prevention, right? You don't want to have your drone dropping in the ocean, losing all your footage. It's just not a good time for anyone. So yeah, I think they're probably the main kind of ones that I find a lot of people doing, a lot of mistakes that people seem to do in the space. So with D1 Store, obviously they've got a lot of specials here. So I decided I'd do the drone course for 50% off. So if you are interested, if you know anyone that wants to pick up the Fearless Drone Academy, it's a 24-hour special, 50% off. It's just D1 Chermside if you are interested in picking that up. 24 hours and then that will end. The QR code as well works if you feel like you need to do that. But yes, that is... I'm just going to take your photo. I believe that's it. Yep. So, any questions? It can be related to YouTube, drones, life. Fearless Drone Academy? Yeah, so I've filled it with a bunch of... I've got a pre-flight checklist that I've developed. I've got a risk assessment or a risk safety. So it's a map that you would be developing for yourself to assess any risks in the area. And a battery flight log as well to monitor battery cycles and whatnot. And then the 15 video sessions, like I said, I do a lot of counseling. So I realized that the big gap for people was we're all very anxious when we start flying. We're really nervous. We don't know what to expect. And that was kind of where I was when I started. So I've tried to make it all around overcoming those fears. So like different little tips on how to overcome the anxieties, different flight patterns that you can do, different flight behaviors that will help you overcome these fears. So yeah, I've really tried to make it more of a mindset thing. And then there's a lot of practical stuff around like how to get the most out of your drone, how to get the most out of the settings and whatnot. So I really try to break it down into every single category. You know, maintaining motors, maintaining the grills on them. Sometimes they get caught up with debris. Even like the obstacle avoidance sensors, they're little cameras, and a lot of the time they can be smudged, and they're not going to be operating properly if they don't have clear vision. So just stuff like that, like those little tips that I've learned along my way that people just aren't seeming to talk about. So yeah, everything that's saved me along the way as well from having drone accidents. Yeah. Cool. Any questions about anything else?
With your YouTube, when you said it's difficult talking to the camera,
Yeah.
with your YouTube channel, do you specifically need to put your physical self on the channel?
Good question. I don't think so, no. There's definitely ways around doing that.
Yeah.
If we're talking drone content,
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely don't have to, because a lot of the time you're filming beautiful scenery or environments.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you have to. I guess the way I see it is that if you want to take it seriously, it is a brand, and your brand is you, typically, right? So if you're to put yourself out in a way, what distinguishes you from other people who are just filming landscapes?
Yeah.
You know, and there's obviously exceptions to the rules where it's like, if your content speaks for itself, you know, and you're just doing it for the sake of documenting your flights, that's completely fine. But I guess it depends how far you want to take that.
And how about getting the views? Is it SEO?
Yeah, so that's, SEO is a big one. So there's, on YouTube, it always changes the way that they actually like categorize content. But basically it's like titles are the big winner. Tags don't hold as much weight as they used to. So in your title, you need to be very clear that you mention like the drone product, mention drone as a keyword a lot of the time. Like if you look at any of my titles nowadays, I'm making sure that I'm touching on every keyword. So it's like when I did the DJI Air 3, it was like DJI Air 3, or before you buy DJI Air 3 review. So I've got before you buy the product, then I've got review, and then I said something like, is this drone worth it? Something like that. So I've mentioned drone as another keyword, because the way that YouTube categorizes it, it will utilize like any keyword that it sees that's getting attention, it will look at you and then try to categorize you higher. So a lot of the time people miss that mark. They just post like, cool shot in Stradbroke Island. And it's like, you're probably not going to get the attention. But if you say epic, you know, Air 3, DJI Air 3 drone footage over a secluded place, whatever, you know, it's like, you've got to really think about the keywords in the title and the description. SEO is a big one. I think the thing with YouTube as well, which is a hard one, you've got to get the initial attention for them to even categorize it or recommend it. So what I do a lot of the time is I'll go on like Facebook groups. There's so many drone Facebook groups, like it's overwhelming. And it can be hard because people are like, oh, you don't spam or whatever. So you've got to be really mindful not to overdo it. But just dropping a video in there and going, hey, what are your thoughts on the new Air 3? And then you include your video, for example, people will start clicking on that link. YouTube will recognize, oh, it's getting a lot of attention from an external source. And if we all know business, right, it's all about eyes. How many eyes are on our platform? They don't want their eyes to go to Instagram. They don't want people to come to YouTube and bounce straight away. So if you're pulling people from Facebook, because all this data is tracked, and they're coming to YouTube and staying on your video, YouTube will go, oh, this looks like a win. Let's promote that one a little bit more. So Reddit's a good one as well. There's a bunch of Reddit groups out there. But it's all about the initial, especially if you don't have an established audience, it's all about the initial views on YouTube, especially. Because YouTube will just not promote it. It'll just sink. They just won't do it. And you can, you look at my older videos, like they don't get any attention now. Even though the channel's growing and I'm getting more subscribers, they're not recommending any of those videos. They're only recommending my newer stuff, the relatively newer stuff. So I think that's probably the best thing to think about. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions, thoughts?
I guess you brought on an editor recently.
Yeah.
What kind of freedoms does that allow you, and what's that kind of extra round for things?
Yeah.
And also, I guess, touching on with drones, you're not getting audio. Are you putting soundscapes and things into these videos?
Yeah, great question. Yep.
As well.
Yep. So the editor I hired someone, I think it's 2021, I said. That so at that time I'd finalized my master's degree and I was working privately as a counselor. And the YouTube channel had built to a point, basically any money I'd made from YouTube, I was investing back into gear, investing back into getting a new microphone, getting a new camera, upgrading my computer system, because that all is directly in relation with the channel growing. So with the editor, it was a decision I was waiting on for a very long time until I'd hit a point where I'm like, I can justify doing this now consistently. So that has been the biggest moment for me with my YouTube, because it takes away all of the discomfort of going, okay, it's a Friday night, I've just worked with clients the whole week, I now have to sit and edit a video, not spend time with my partner, not see a friend, just sit in an office and still edit a video. So now I get the opportunity to do the fun part, which is construct my thoughts on a product, compare it, test it, really get into the nitty gritty, which is what I love, all the detail focused stuff. And then I send it to my editor and basically at the beginning of the video, I go, hey mate, thank you so much for all your hard work. This is what I'm thinking for this video. I'm thinking that maybe we can do this and this, but I'll leave it up to you for creative freedom. Because I guess the way I see it is like, I want to be an approachable boss, someone who feels comfortable to work for me, who gets the freedom to take time off if he needs the time off. So yeah, I mean, for me, I see it as a really big step. I see him as part of the channel, because he is now. He helps with all the content. He's got a clear vision for what we're doing. So it has made a big difference for sure. Yeah.
So you don't have any tips for video editing generally, then? You don't do any anymore?
Yeah, so the reason I got an editor, I felt like I wasn't improving. I felt like I'd hit a point and I was trying to learn DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci Resolve is a great free piece of editing software if no one's used it. But that's what I was using to try to get better. And I just found that, what I was saying in the earlier slides, I didn't love it. I didn't enjoy editing. I was sitting there and I was spending time I could be spending with my family or friends, and I just didn't love it. So, I mean, I'm probably not the person to ask, because for me, I fell out of love with it a long time ago, and it was just a necessity to keep the content coming. So yeah, my advice would be, if you can, get yourself an editor. But outside of that, it's a hard one. I mean, DaVinci Resolve is a good one because it's free, and they're Australian based, so their support's pretty readily available, but they have a lot of tutorials online on their official channel. And a lot of people, a lot of the bigger YouTubers have transitioned to DaVinci Resolve. So there are tutorials just everywhere on how to get the most out of content. So, I mean, definitely tutorials on YouTube. There's a lot out there. Yeah.
Your editor, is it Australian based or overseas?
So he's based in the Philippines. If I was to get an editor in Australia, it would be $60 an hour. In the Philippines, I'm paying him significantly more than he would get in any office job. And basically we've agreed on a project by project basis of how much I pay him. But a lot of the time, if he's done extra work for me, I'll just pay him extra. Because again, I see it as he's part of the team now. He's part of the community. He's helping the channel grow. So Philippines, the reason I went the Philippines is the time difference isn't too much. So in terms of communicating with someone, not too much of a gap. I'm not thinking, what's the time there? Is it going to be middle of the morning or whatever? It's only a few hours difference. So Philippines is great. There's a lot of Facebook groups called, I think they call it virtual assistants in the Philippines or editors in the Philippines. And a lot of the time you can start out relatively low key, don't have to spend too much money to get an editor. And he's great. I've got a few people I've connected with through him, but pretty affordable and very high quality work. Always consistent. Yeah.
I may sound a silly question, but when you said post to Google Maps, when you post that photo, do you link it to your Instagram account or something like that?
It's hard. You can develop a profile to promote a little bit, but it's more so you put your name to it. So you would put your full name as your profile, and then you'd go on a hotel.
On your Google account?
Yeah. So you'd be logged into your Google account. You'd go to a hotel. You click on photos, and then it would say add photo. So you're just adding it, and then your name would be associated. Okay. So for mine says Dan Davis brackets DansTube.TV. So I'm still trying to promote myself. It's a bit of a hard one, but the whole thing is that you're putting your name behind it, so that if you were to go in for a drone job, you've got some credibility behind what you're putting out there, your portfolio as such.
And when you said approaching major organisations or hotels, is there any legality of taking photos of it beforehand and then approaching and saying, hey, I've got this, do you like this? Instead of just going in and saying, would you mind me doing it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. I think the drone, especially in Australia, the drone industry isn't overly regulated. When I first started making drone content, CASA were taking down people's photos on Facebook just from posting it on their own personal account. So they were aggressively going after people going, nah, take it down. And people, I knew someone who got a fine. It was like a $1,500 fine because they'd posted one photo on Facebook. So now they don't seem to regulate it as heavily. My recommendation would always be get a remote pilot license. But at the end of the day, if you've got a drone that has zoom, or if you're following all the rules and regulations, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, as long as you're not like filming someone doing something, you know, or you're coming really close to the hotel, you're hovering right next to it. Like as long as you follow those rules and regulations.
So I have approached numerous organisations, and whilst some people don't know what the drones can do, and I think, oh yeah, it sounds good. We'll think about it, and I never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And I think about, not a Hilton, but some other big major hotel, and I go and approach them, and you're talking to like a duty manager or someone, and it never progresses to someone who makes the decision, guess what's getting there.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked if you think it's a good idea to take just one or two photos from up high, good quality, and say, this is what I can.
Yeah, if it's not breaking any rules, I don't see that being a problem at all. Yeah. I also think that there's a website called hunter.io, and basically hunter.io, if you type in a website like hilton.com.au, it will grab all the email addresses associated with that business and it will display them for you. So for me, I've been able to find people who are really high up in a business because of that. LinkedIn's another good way, because LinkedIn, they display what their title is. They'll say whatever of Hilton. They'll say operations manager of Hilton Australia. So I guess there's a book on it called The Third Door, and it's the idea of like taking the third door. Don't try to just reach out to people or just make it obvious. You've got to think outside of the box. How can I talk to the person directly who's making that decision? Because like you said, if you're talking to someone who's lower in that company, they're not making the decision. Yeah. They'll just go, yeah, I'll pass it on for you. But they won't.
What was that?
So Hunter, so HUNTER.io. I-O.
Just want to say it might also be not taking photos directly of that particular hotel, but building small and building that portfolio and, taking photos of hotels that you have access to and then examining that too.
Yeah, exactly right.
And it's saying you don't need to show them their own buildings, but, here's what I've done previously. So,
yeah, that's it. Scaling it, right?
Yeah.
Starting off with something achievable. Yeah, 100%.
It's also a populous area on that fund regulations. I wanted to ask about the remote, the pilot license, I guess, and what that affords you versus just I've got, a drone up to 250 grams and, I know what I can do with that, but getting the license, what that enables you to.
Yeah, so again, it's a weird thing because you can, like I was saying, you can get paid work as a drone operator without a license. I've seen it so much. It happens all the time. I had it before I even had a drone license. But I guess what that does is it brings credibility. It shows that you know what you're talking about with your drones. They also teach you a lot of stuff around like council regulations. So if you were to request, let's say, for example, you want to fly in a populated area, you can send through a request to the council to request to fly in that area for a period of time. And someone who was in the earlier seminar told us about an example of when he had to request a period of time. They approved him for 30 minutes. That's all they gave him. They're like, yep, you can film for 30 minutes, and then that's it. You have to cease operation. So something like doing a drone course, the REPL, they'll teach you about those processes. They'll tell you how to request those more exclusive opportunities to fly. It's just a credibility thing, right? Like if you want to go into more of a paid capacity, you rocking up with an actual certificate saying I'm a qualified drone pilot, you are going to stand out a little bit more than Joe Blow who just rocks up with nothing. So I guess it's the credibility thing, just like anything. Yeah, even though, it's like a lot of people would say, oh, it's just a degree, it's just a piece of paper. It's like it's what the piece of paper represents, which is that you have the knowledge, you're willing to apply that knowledge, and you have some form of expertise or knowledge in that area. So I guess that's pretty much what it would be.
Is that all at once license you can get?
Yeah, they have a REOC as well, which is more of like a business-based one. They have other ones. You've got to be really mindful because there's definitely companies out there that try to sell a drone license. So like my drone course, that's not a licensed drone course, but some people will market their drone course as you'll become a qualified pilot. So it's like the REPL is the one that's like your remote pilot license. So there are,
That's the main one.
that's the like main, that's the Cert 3 REPL. Sometimes they call it like visual line of sight license as well. That's like the main one that CASA recognizes. And we're always operating under CASA, so that's the one to go for. A lot of them will try to market it in different ways, for sure.
Would you, so say, we're from the UK, so
Okay.
if I was to do that here, obviously understanding the Australia, do you reckon I can still leverage that when I go back to the UK?
I don't know all the rules in the UK. I think it would be similar. I think from memory they do have slightly different rules and regulations.
Would it still be, do you reckon it would still work like a marketing tool that I've done it overseas, done their regulations?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Are you saying for the qualification or for posting?
For qualification.
It's hard to say because some places don't recognize it.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I don't know if it's a globally recognized one. Probably worth, like if you reach out, there's a few drone schools out there.
Yeah.
So maybe just reach out to them. I know the UK would have their own like aviation body, whatever that's called. I can't even think of what that's called, but reach out to them maybe. They might be able to clarify. You could just send them the link and go, I'm thinking about taking this course. Is this recognized in the UK? And if they say no, then it's probably not worth spending that money if you're going back. Yeah. Because sometimes, that's the case.
How much is it?
I think it was $2,500, I want to say. Something like that. Yeah, I think it was. Different places will have different prices. But I think it was 2.5. Yeah. I learned a lot from it. I mean, it was a 3-day workshop. There was a lot of theory early on. So you were in the classroom learning about like battery, all the swelling stuff I spoke about, battery management, motor management, how to like look after your drone, how to see if there's any safety concerns with your drone. And then they took us out on the field and we did practical stuff. So they'd set up like cones and they'd go, all right, I want you to fly here. You're the drone, fly there. You're the drone, fly here. They'd get you to fly and just based purely without looking at your controller, return the drone back to you when it's facing the opposite direction. Little things like that just to kind of help you if you're in that scenario where your feed dies, for example, on your phone. Little like practical things like that. It was helpful. There was a lot of insights. A lot of those things I spoke about, I had like taken it in my own way and tweaked it a little bit, but a lot of that knowledge came from that drone course. So I'd say, like I said, it saved me 2 drones. If I didn't spin the motors, that drone would have 100% crashed. So good to know, for sure.
If I was going to buy a drone today, would you recommend?
What's your budget? Because it depends. I mean,
Under $2,000?
probably the Mini 3 Pro, I'd want to say. I reckon. I think the Mini 3 Pro is.
That's what it was. Sort of.
It's a good starting base way to go to, and you learn a lot from it, and then you feel confident enough you go to the next one, and it will become addictive.
Yeah, so addictive.
What about the phone rather than the RC?
RC.
Yeah.
What about the bigger batteries compared to the smaller batteries?
Yes.
Even though the Joe was $250,000.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I like having one that's under 250, and then I have the 2 plus batteries.
But it comes with it anyway, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the combo that I got came with the 250 one, the under 250, sub 250, and then 2 of the plus batteries. Yeah, but Australia is a bit weird with stuff like that. They're not heavily regulated, so I don't want to say it, but it's kind of like, is a police officer going to rock up to you and go, hey, is your drone 250 grams, mate? It just doesn't happen. As long as you're following the rules, flying safely, you're not annoying people. Like the other day I was down at one of the points and there was someone hovering their drone over an elderly couple and it was about 15 meters above their head and you could see they were genuinely terrified. I'm like, if you don't do stuff like that, you'll be fine. Just don't fly, don't be a nuisance. That's all it is.
What are the restrictions over 250?
What are
the restrictions for drone
over 250? So if you go on CASA's website, they specify a lot of that stuff. A lot of the time it's relating to paid work. Sometimes they'll specify it as like, if you want to work for a company in this capacity, you need to have an REPL or a REOC.
If it's over 250.
Yes, yeah. But 250, a lot of the time it's like, you can get away with most things. 250, you can request to fly within no-fly zones as well. So you can fly within the 5.5 nautical miles of a helicopter, a heliport or an airport, but you need to request that through the app. So if you get the approval, you can fly legally because it's under 250 grams. Where anything over 250 grams, you cannot do that.
I live about 3 kilometres from Coolangatta Airport, so every time I fly, I have to get permission.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that permission only lasts a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
There were times that I actually asked for permission in place and I got it at different times that I didn't get it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, just from Mount Cool, for example, I flew there 3 times and it was amazing because no one has footage there.
Yeah.
Then I went there, all prepared and all geared up, and then we got permission on it.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, it can be a bit hit and miss. But you can request that through the app. There's the option. I think it's called Unlock Geo
Yeah.
Zone, I want to say. Yeah.
But again,
And I'll fly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the big one. If you want to fly close by, there's still rules. So it's basically you're not allowed to fly in the direct flight path. So even if the drone is under 250, if you go with the OK to Fly app, it will show you the flight path that the airplanes come in. I can't even talk.
Yeah, certain ceilings aren't there. Like,
Yeah.
People take it down.
Yeah.
Plus it's,
Yeah. So it's stuff like that. You can't fly in directly in the flight path, even if it is 250 grams, because they still see that as a safety concern, which makes sense. I get that. Yeah. Yeah.
what about with the warranty and the aftermarket warranty?
Yeah, it's a good one. I personally haven't got it myself. I had it when I first started flying, but I find that I'm just hyper aware when I'm flying. I'm like really trying to follow all those safety rules so that it never happens. I mean, touch wood, right? It's like, what have other people done? Have you got insurance or warranty or?
I actually do. I got the, of course, the fresh package.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I do some paid work, and some companies do request to have that, public liability.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's actually a good selling point for when I'm doing some nice work as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also good, for example, I had a friend the other day, she was flying off Gold Coast, and she had the WP goggle on, and she was just, she had stuff in her pocket, and just flying, and all of a sudden, all this was dropped.
Oh, no way.
Yes. So, she had insurance.
Yeah. Good situation to have that. Yeah. That's terrible. Yeah.
How much did it like 180 grams?
We actually sold 2 batteries in them, not everything, but 2 batteries. But
Right.
2 batteries.
The absolute refresh. Very fresh.
They can't fresh.
Yeah, very fresh.
It's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
From personal experience, I had an ibis, the big chicken,
Yeah.
crash into my drone and fall into the water.
Mm.
But the rule is, if you have to feel like a drunk person bump into me
Yeah.
on the nightclub, and you just continue flying, my drone's in water. But I had to retrieve the drone, send it out. They said, look, it's not our fault, and I agree with them. But they actually, DJI offered me a similar drone for retail price, kind of like a special deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was,
Right.
Yeah.
And they just pushed it out a year, I think. You get a free year if you don't claim within the first 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
But I just recently bought the new one they released a couple of weeks ago. And I really looked at it and I haven't got the package because now there's so many smarts with it, right? That there's like complete avoidance all the way around with the new one and the return to home it figures out. I don't know whether it figures out wind speed as well, but pretty much tells you when to come back.
Okay.
That, if you're going to lose a drone or if you're going to stick it in the you still got to go and get it. So if you
Yeah.
can't go and get it, the stuff anyway, right?
Okay. No, I thought there is a refresh.
And there's a flyaway.
Flyaway, yeah. But you've got to pay 350 as an excess.
Yeah. And I think they still want to feel logs and understand something went wrong. So there's still a lot of
Yeah, a lot of grey.
Flyway option works without two flyways, but
Might be worth talking to them here. They'd probably be able to help. Yeah.
my first one I did my mini spray. I saw this rock and I saw this face on the rock, and I'm gonna get that photo. But the drone was over the water, and then I lost contact completely. I couldn't see, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna tell my wife. I just bought this drone. I'm thinking of excuses.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
What do I do?
but when I go back to the car, it was on top of my car.
Oh, return to home. No way.
So I was like, so relieved.
Yeah.
So relieved. Because if you lose contact with
Yeah.
the remote, you will come back home.
Yeah.
That was the bones. The previous versions, no.
Yeah, no.
So I
Phantom 2 didn't even have a gimbal. I ended up buying
Yeah.
a gimbal, all my GoPro, and then bought a transmitter. Give it a 5 gigahertz transmission back to a 4-inch screen.
Huh.
Back in the day, and I bolted it all together. I knew it was working. But,
No way.
Yeah, early days, and there was no return to home. You literally had to watch it.
Yeah.
I know where it was.
Yeah. They're foolproof now. They are.
Which
Yeah.
kind of makes the care refresh less and less important. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Because at the moment they're offering, what is it, 1655 will get you a series of things that I may or may not need. With the drone and the extra battery pack.
the Fly More package.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, so they give you, with the F3, they give you an additional 2 batteries, no ND filters, and like 2 spare sets of propellers as well.
Yeah.
And
So just wondering if it's worth doing that or just getting
Yeah.
so the new one will do 46 minutes.
Yeah.
With 1 battery, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, you end up paying a little bit more for it, or like here, I think there's a discount today. Isn't there?
Yeah.
They won't
Yeah.
get a discount on that, they won't.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I rang them earlier, that's what I found out.
It was on the webpage. You could get, yeah, it's on the webpage today.
Mm.
First, what is it, 30 customers?
30 customers,
With
yeah.
that package though, with the more fly more,
Then you have
they won't. They're heavily discounted. I rang them earlier.
Okay.
this specified
Oh,
on the webpage about like picking up one of those.
15% off RRP bundles. So
Okay.
if you're going for the Mini 3 Pro with the Flymo kit, just
Okay.
by itself, we
Yeah.
can. If it's the Mini 3 Pro with the Flymo kit, but then like the winter bundle with the other like 9 accessories, that's going to be off RRP,
Okay.
50%.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, like for example, the previous versions of drones, you get like 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops, and then you get the 30 yay,
Yeah.
you got the 46 minutes. You don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's so
You
much
got
time.
20, 30, 40, 50% battery because you're ready.
Yeah, it's so much time.
There you got another 2
Which
batteries.
is great.
But it's
Yeah.
good to have the batteries in case you haven't recharged them or you got maybe the
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
you can't charge it anywhere, you've got options.
Yeah.
That's
And
it,
you
yeah.
can have the kids send battery out of that into other devices as well.
Yeah. And with the new Air 3 as well, the charging hub, it's the first time they've done it, but you can press and then press and hold, and it will start trickle charging into the lower charge batteries. Oh, sorry, into the highest charge battery. So if you're traveling somewhere and one's got 2 bars, one's got 1 bar, and then one's got 3 bars, it will start sending it into the 3 bars. So that's something that I hope they do with the other, but that was a really cool update that they brought out. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions, or we're all good to leave it there?
Can I have a drone?
Yeah. Just send me a message. Just send me a message. Yeah.
Right this way.
Yeah, right this way. I've got a few on display over here. Yeah. Heavily discounted, of course.
Well, thank you.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Reach out if you need any other questions or anything. Cool. Thank you. Have a good one. That's all good. That's all good. No worries.